Hello children, welcome to this English as a short teleteaching program. My dear students, in the last session we discussed the very interesting story, The Lost Child by Mulak Raj Anand. And now you see the screen, the site of the village fair. So, we have already discussed the summary of the story and we have also checked our comprehension of the first part of the story. So, let us take some time to recapitulate the previous session, to remind the previous discussion, and then we will also check our comprehension of the last three parts. So, dear students, let us recapitulate what we discussed. So, we have discussed, this is a non-detailed text. So, we have discussed the summary of the story The Lost Child, and for your better understanding I have divided the story into 4 parts, part 1, part 2, part 3 and part 4. So, this is a story about a child who has been lost, right, and who is missed in the village fair, who went with his parents to a village fair and he lost his parents, he was lost, he missed his parents, and what happened? Let us see part 1. On the way, the story begins with the village setting and the child started going to the village fair with his parents, right. So, what happened on the way? How the two sides of the line, the two sides of the way were full of toys, and the child was very much attracted by the toys and he wanted to buy the toy, to have the toys, but his father was a strict person. They were from a, or the child was from a poor family. So, the father did not afford money, that is why the child could not buy, or the mother could not help the child, but only to divert the mind of the child, the mother used to say, come child come, see child see, look before you, right. This type of things the mother went on saying. And in the part 2, my dear students, in the fair they arrived at the fair and they started watching the stalls, and when the child watched different kinds of things in different stalls, he wanted to buy something, to have something. So, the story is based on everywhere the story writer writes, I want this, the child says I want this, I want that, like this, but unfortunately the parents did not buy anything. In the part 3, in the summary we also discussed, they were in the fair and when he was watching different stalls, he came to the temple, right, and he came to the roundabout and the temple, and there when he was very much attracted and he was very much eager to sit in the roundabout, looked at his parents, but could not find, and at that place at the roundabout he felt that his parents were not present, right, they were missing. And in the part 4, what happened? At the temple gate, a man lifted the child and also wanted to make the child stop his crying, because the child started crying loudly and he was helpless, he did not see his parents, he was very sorry, extremely sorry, and this man who helped him, who lifted him from the crowd, wanted to divert his mind, but the child said, I want my father, I want my mother. So, you see, so beginning, come child come, the mother's and the father's words, and the word of the father and the word of the mother, like this. And in the part 2, the story is based on I want this, I want that. In the part 3, when he was lost, his father, his parents, they were missing, the child said, I want my father, I want my mother, and at the end again the child started crying, right. So, this is all about what we discussed in the summary, and now you see recapitulation. Part 1, on the way to the fair, come child come, look child what is before you. This was these two lines have been repeated in the first part. So, a child walks with his parents to a fair, fascinated by many things on sights, line of toys, flowering mustard field, dragonflies, raining petals, these are the things we have already discussed, right. Now, you see part 2, in the fair flower basket, the child watched different kinds of flowers and sweet mid seller, he was selling sweets, different kinds of sweets like jalebi, burfi and so many types of so many kinds of sweets, and the flower seller was selling flowers. There was a man who held a pole with balloons, and that was also very interesting, very attractive. The child was attracted, fascinated by the sight of the balloons, he wanted to buy some of the balloons. There was a snake charmer, you see very nice picture, he was playing the snakes, and that was also a very attractive sight. The child was also fascinated by that sight, but he was very much eager to sit in the roundabout, and the story is based on I want this, I want that, I want flowers, I want balloons like this, right. And let us discuss some of the questions in part 2. So, what kind of feeling came to the mind of the child at the time of entering the fair? My dear students, the child arrived at the place, at the village fair, where the people were enjoying, a lot of people, and thus for the first time in his life he saw this type of crowd. So, the feeling that came to the mind of the child at that time looking at the crowd was he was very much fear, right, and he was also very much eager. Two things you see, the child was afraid of looking at the crowd because he had never seen such type of crowd, and he was very much eager, there was interest, a lot of interest in his mind, he was very much eager to buy different kinds of things. So, two things you see, the story writer Mulak Raj Anand very nicely, very beautifully, wonderfully narrates the story. The child was afraid of the things, and he was also interested, very much delighted looking at different things, right. Number 2, what things did the child see in the fair as described in this part 2 of the story? Se kon dekhila fair. So, we have already discussed in the summary, there are different kinds of toys when at two sides of the road when he was walking to the fair. He came across a mustard field, a mango grove, different kinds of insects, birds, right. But here what he finds, a sweet meat seller who was selling sweets, different kinds of very wonderful sweets. There is a flower seller, a balloon seller, a snake charmer, Shapua Kela, right, a roundabout. So, in this part 2 of the story, the child saw different things like a sweet seller, a flower seller, a balloon seller, a snake charmer, a roundabout, right, in the fair, right. Let us go to the next question. Question number 3, you see, what happened to the child at the sweet meat seller? Jitole mitha bikali ku dekhila, tha monore kon srushti hela, ko bhaliya feeling. Very nicely, really. In fact, the story writer, the Indian story writer Mulak Raj Anand actually narrates the psychology, the feeling, the experience of the child in the fair. साधारणतः आम जो छोट छोट पिला होते तुम सब जाओ तुम मानकर फिलिंग केमती थाए गोटे मेलारे से जिनस को सुंदर भाव रे चमत्कार भाव रे वेरी वंडरफुली द स्टोरी राइटर नरेट्स. Stared open-eyed, his mouth watered, slowly murmured, I want burfi, without waiting moved on. You see, so stared open-eyed, आखि खोली कि पूरा चाहेंगी रहिला मिठा को पिलाटी, and his mouth watered. साधारणतः तो मिठा पिठा देखिले मिठा खटा ये सब देखिले रिएक्शन आमर हुए लाड़ बाहर. The same thing happened in the case of the child. Slowly murmured, he was afraid of his father, so slowly he whispered to his mother, Mother, I want burfi, right? And question number 4, at every stall the child wanted to buy something, but without his father's reply he moved on. Why? At every stall, at the flower seller, at the sweetmeat seller, everywhere, or the snake charmer, everywhere he stopped, watched, saw the beautiful sight. He was very much attracted, but without his father's reply, he moved on. He knew that his father would refuse to buy. ବାପାଙ୍କୁ ଜମା କିଛି କହୁନଥିଲା, ମାଙ୍କୁ କହୁଥିଲା. And this is also very common for every child, right? So he knew that his father would refuse to buy. ବାପା ମନା କରିଦେବେ କହିକି ଲାଭ ନାହିଁ, ତେଣୁ ମାଙ୍କୁ କହୁଥିଲା. So ବାପାଙ୍କ reply, he did not wait for his father's reply. Next question, which sight attracted the child most and why? You see, he saw different kinds of things, different kinds of foods, flowers, everything, but the sight of a round, you look at the answer, the sight of a roundabout in full swing, men, women, children carried in a whirling motion, shouted out, he shouted out of excitement. जोर रे पाटी गला. राउंडाबाउट जानथो समसु रामदोली कुहा जाए ताको. दुई प्रकार गोटे घिर घिर के चारिपट बुले, आ गोटे तळु ऊपर बुले. You know, it moves from up to down, and sometimes there is a roundabout which moves around a pole, right? So the children, they are very, very interested. Every child is interested to sit, to move, right? So the sight of the roundabout in full swing, which where men, women, children, they were present there, right? And at that place he shouted out of excitement, "Father, mother, I want that burfi, I want that garland." What do you understand from these expressions of the child? From these expressions of the child, we know that the desire of any child for any wonderful or attractive thing. So this is very common, very nicely, right? The story writer describes. This is the psychology. This is ये हूँ समस्तଙ୍କର इच्छा. प्रति पिला चाहे ମୁଁ ଗୋଟେ ଭଲ ଜିନିଷ କେମିତି ନେବି, ଭଲ ଜିନିଷ କିଣିବି, ଭଲ ଜିନିଷ ଉପଭୋଗ କରିବି. I must enjoy very good thing, right? So let's go to part 3 in the fair. So first part on the way, second part they arrived in the fair, at the fair, and they saw different kinds of things. And what happens? He was very much interested, right, at the roundabout. Let's see what happened after getting lost in the fair. So when he asked, he was excited. Out of excitement he shouted, "I want to sit on the roundabout." What happened? Bold request of the child. He requested his parents without looking at them. The parents were not present, and real fear without parents came to his mind. ए पर्यंत टिके टिके डरुथिला, केन जेतोळे देखिला ता बापा मान नाहंती, खजी जाइछन्ती गहळी रे, कोठी खसी जाइछन्ती. सेठी से लाखी लाखी लाइछि, से पछरे सब जिंस देखुछि, बाप मा आगु टिके पळैछन्ती, कोठी एपर छोटा हे जाइछन्ती. सो दी फेयर वाज सो क्राउडेड, इत्ते गहळी थिला, इत्ते a lot of people were there. So he was lost, he missed it, or he was lost. His parents were missing and they were not present, right? So he became helpless, and his helplessness and sobbing, right, that worried, or he was very much worried, and that actually attracted a man. You see, a man is convincing a small child in the picture, just like this image, this picture, it happened there. You can find also, you can see the very, very beautiful sight of the roundabout, right. So my dear students, so in part 3, this is all about how he was lost, what happened, how the man lifted him, and how he would help him, we will see, right. Then we will discuss some questions. So my dear children, let us check our comprehensions through some questions, right. So part 3, comprehension questions. Number 1, what is the third part of the story about? This is a global question. So what do we know from this part? How the child was lost? This part is about the lost child, how the child was lost, and how he was afraid of everything, right. So tears from his eyes came down, and how he worriedly searches for his parents running here and there. So this part is about how the child was lost, missed his parents, the parents were not present there, how the real fear came to actually at the entrance. When he entered, when he arrived, there was fear, there was interest, there was fear also, there was happiness, there was fear, but the real fear came to the mind of the child when he did not find his parents. tears came from his eyes, came down, right, and he was very much worried, and he worriedly searches for his parents running from one place to another. And question number 2, what happened to the child when he did not get any reply to his bold request to go on to the roundabout? So, my dear children, I told you, we discussed when the roundabout, the sight of the roundabout with a number of people, children, men, women, that attracted the child wanted to say something to his father whom he was afraid of, right. So, here what happened, when he requested boldly with a lot of courage, he did not get any reply, right. So, turned and looked all sides, there was no sign of his parents. So, that is why he was very much afraid of everything, right. Question number 3, you see, where did he run quickly? So, the temple side, the temple gate was crowded. He thought his parents would be there. That is why he ran to the temple. He ran from one place to another, he moved here and there, started crying. He was very much afraid of everything, and he ran to the temple if he would see his parents at the gate where a lot of people were there, right. Number 4, you see, why did the child run quickly towards a temple? Looking at the crowding people, right, crowded people, and his hope was to find his parents. So, he thought that his parents would be there, right. Number 5, who lifted the child off and why? A man, a stranger. The child did not know that man, and he heard the cry of the child. So, hearing his cry in highest pitch, जोर रे पाटी करी पिलाटी कांदुतिला तेणु एक शुणिकी very kind man, the man was very kind, he was very helping. So, he went to the child and he tries his best to lead the child off. Number 6, which words of the child does the writer repeat many times in this part? What makes him do so? The child repeats father, mother, right, to reflect the helplessness of the child. So, the child started only repeated the same thing, father, mother, father, mother, bapa ma kahiki chariad ghuri bulila, moved from one place to another, right. And let us see the last part. You see, in the fair se mela bhitre kon hela feeling, and this part, the last, the end part of the story is about the feeling and reaction of the lost child, right. So, you see the main ideas, the man's attempt to make the child happy. So, the man took the child to the roundabout, to the snake charmer, to the man with balloons, flower seller, sweetmeat seller, and everywhere, but there was only one reaction of the child, I want my mother, I want my father. So, my dear children, you see, when the child arrived at the village fair, he was interested, he was very much attracted towards everything, but when he was lost, he did not find his parents, everything became tasteless, right. So, there was no attraction of anything. You see, what an interesting kotha. पिला जितेबाला जात्रा पशिला सब जिन किणा चाहिए सब बेले से माँ को रिक्वेस्ट कला बापा को डर माँ को रिक्वेस्ट करता ये नेबी से नेबी जिते रामदोली पाखे पहुँचला राउंड अबाउट पाखे से सी आउ ही गैदर्ड करेज साहस सहित पार्टी करके कहला मुझे बसबी बट अनफॉर्चुनेटली द पेरेंट्स दे वर नॉट प्रेजेंट एंड द चाइल्ड फेल्ट दैट ही वाज लॉस्ट एंड ही रैन फ्रॉम वन प्लेस टू अनदर एंड ही वेंट टू द भाविला जे गहली अच्छी बेसी से मो बापा माँ थे मंदिर पाखक स्टार्टेड रनिंग जोर रे दौड़ीगला से सी पूरापूरी स्क्वीज हो चिपी होगला पे एत गहली थे द क्राउड वाज सो राइट बिग एंड ए काइंड मैन लिफ्टेड हिम ऑफ सेव्ड हिम एंड ट्राइड टू कन्विन्स द चाइल्ड ये देख ये सब चित्र गुड़ाक उल्ट हो माने सेपटू से आसला फ्लावर देन फ्लावर सेलर स्वीटमीट सेलर एपट आरंभ हो कौन से राउंड अबाउट टू जाइए स्नेक चार्मर राउंड अबाउट देन विथ बेलून फ्लावर सेलर स्वीटमीट सेलर तार्थ से जो गुड़ा देखिए आसला ये बर्तमान से गोटे आड़ नौ द मैन इज कैरिंग द चाइल्ड कन्विन्सिंग हिम asking him to buy anything he wanted jaha chahunchi mu kini debi boli kohuchi kintu he said no I want my mother, I want my father. This was the reaction. So the story, at the end of the story writer says, for a child his parents are the sweetest and loveliest thing. Nothing in this world is more or is sweeter than his parents, than the parents of a child. गोटे पिला पाई ता बाप माँ ठू बढ़िया किसी मीठा जिनस ना किसी आकर्षणीय जिनस पृथ्वी रे नाही. So this is what the writer wants to. So that's why the parents, they should also be very much careful. They should have a lot of responsibility towards the children, right? So let's discuss some of the comprehension questions to check our understanding. Comprehension. What is the last part of the story about? The last part is about the parents are everything for a child, the most precious gift, the asset to the child, the most valuable gift of the God for the child. What did the man want to know from the child? The man wanted to know how he came to this fair and who came with him, who had come with him, kiye asthile, kemti asila, and about his parents, right? So number 2, what did the man want to know? How he came and to know about his parents. Next question you see, where did the man take the child first to make him happy? To the roundabout. जोठी से बेसी attraction थिला सेठी गला, right? Then number 4, what other stalls did the man show him to convince the child? The man again showed the snake charmer. उल्टा चूड़ा का देखी शेष जाइथिला से पुणी शेष आडू आसिला. Roundabout, snake charmer, balloon seller, the flower seller, the sweetmeat seller. Again the man took the child to every stall asking him to buy. He would pay the money, no problem, but the child refused, right? And number 5, what was the last attempt of the man to change the mind of the child? Thought to change his mind by giving a gift of sweets. Took him to the counter, asked him about his favorite sweets. Favorite sweets, right? Sabutu koda priyo mitha taku pacharla, kintu child did not accept. What was the reaction of the child every time? What did he say to the man? Cries, turns his eyes, refuses to take. I want. मुह बुलाई दूला. I want my mother, I want my father. मोर माँ दरकार, मो बापा दरकार, किसी भी दरकार नहीं, right? So now you see the summary. So we have 4 parts. Let me just consolidate the ideas. First part, on the way to the fair, what happened? Line of toys, flowering mustard field, dragonflies, raining petals of grove, and every time the mother said, come child come, right? But the child said, I want that, but mother said, look child. Second part, in the fair, arrived there, flower baskets, sweetmeat seller, flower seller, man holding pot, everything, and the child wanted to buy. So I want this, I want that. And the third part, after getting lost in the fair, he was very strong, you are courageous, he wanted to shout and wanted to request his father to sit on the roundabout. And the end part, the feeling of the child, the man wanted to, attempted to convince him, but the child refused, started crying and said, I want my mother and father. So my dear children, so for a child, the parents are the most precious gift of the God, and the parents should be very careful for their children. This is the theme of the story. I think you understand the story nicely, and you should prepare yourself for your examination. Thank you very much. The time is over. Goodbye. See you in the next session.